Good evening, everyone. Oops, sorry. Good evening, everyone. I'm Chris Williams. I always forget about that recording in progress. Welcome to another fun Michael's Community Classroom class that we're going to learn to paint a bowl of berries this evening here in the Atlanta, Georgia area where Plaid is located. It's the end of May and our weather here starts warming up and the strawberry fields in our area are bursting with strawberries ready for the picking. So I thought this would be a fun project to go ahead and start with this evening. If you have any questions during the class tonight, be sure and type them in the chat. Here with me tonight is Dylan Estes here on the Plaid team, and he's going to help moderate. So he'll either try and answer the questions for you and or relay them on to me. So we're going to have a lot of fun tonight. So thank you for joining me. I think we can go ahead and go overhead. And this is a close-up. I always like to show you the finished project up close first. We're going to do the bowl to begin with, and you can choose to put a crack in your bowl or leave it without a crack. And then we'll work on some background of the greenery. Then we'll work on some berries, finish with some blossoms. We'll do our background after that. And then we'll do the last little bit of the trailing of the little leaves that come out on the black. So if you received your pattern on Michael's Community Classroom, you saw that there was a post. When you print your pattern out, it prints out two sheeted like this. And you can either use the scissors as it's shown here and cut them and tape the pattern together, or you can use tracing paper and trace out the pattern. And then your pattern should already be transferred onto your canvas. We're using an 8 by 10 canvas tonight. And I always lay my tracing paper pattern down on top of the canvas because I can see through this and make sure that I have it centered. If you did transfer these lines, then you know where the edge of the canvas is. I transfer my designs using gray graphite, which is like an artist carbon paper, and I use a tool called a stylist. This one is one made by Plaid and it's double-ended, so you can do a very fine point or like a medium point here. And once you lay your graphite underneath on top of the canvas with the graphite side down and it's kind of sandwiching it between the canvas and your pattern, you then take that stylus and retrace your pattern lines. So when I transferred my pattern lines tonight, I'm going to bring this up close so you can see. I then went back over mine to make it a little bit darker so it'll be easier for you to see. I only transferred the bowl, the berries, the leaves, and the blossoms. I did not transfer these delicate little leaves and stems that come out and or little trendles or curlicues that you see here in the design. I did not transfer those because I felt it would be easier to paint the black background around this, and then we can paint them freehand on top. If you have transferred those little details here that extend beyond our design, that's fine. You can try and work around it, or you can just go ahead and paint around and then come back and put that back later on top. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll leave this here so that we can see both what I'm working on and the hero here at the same time. I'm working with FolkArt Acrylics tonight. And if you are painting along with me, that's awesome. If you just want to watch and maybe take notes or just kind of hang around and enjoy a beverage with us and paint, and later when you have the recording, that's great too. As you heard, this class is being recorded, and it's best to find it on the Michael's channel of YouTube when you are all said and done and ready to paint along with me. This class will take usually about 12 to 24 hours before it's uploaded. I'm going to go ahead and start putting some of the acrylic colors out onto my palette. And the first two colors that I put out is linen. And then I have some white here, and I'm using Wicker White. And I'm also going to add some cinnamon. And so those are my first three colors right now. We're going to start working on that bowl. So I'm going to work with a larger flat brush, and I'm going to go ahead and use a 3/4 inch flat just to kind of get started. Did I see a question that somebody wanted to know a substitute for linen?
Yes.
That was this color right here. I would go ahead and take white and add to the white a light brown color. Linen is, think about a linen fabric, linen clothing. That's exactly what this looks like. It's kind of a very, very light, oh, I don't want to say camel. Camel's a little bit darker, but it's a very light brown. And this is what was going to be the base of your bowl. So just think about what color you want for the base of your bowl. And like I started to say, is I'm using a 3/4 inch flat brush. So I'm going to stroke up into that puddle of paint, flip my brush over and fill both sides of that flat of the brush with the linen. And then I'm going to go ahead and begin painting in the bowl shape. So I'm going to use that chisel edge of my brush to its best advantage and be able to go ahead and start working on that shape of the bowl. I'm going to go ahead and work around my strawberry and around the leaf. And when you ever go strawberry picking, if you have, you might have been up close and personal with a strawberry leaf. The strawberry leaves have very jaggedy edges. So we want to make sure that we maintain that jagged edge of the leaf. So as I am painting the bowl, I'm going to paint around that jagged edge and around the shape of the strawberries here. And this is not anything that we need to labor over. This is something that you can do fairly quickly. When you learn to use your brushes in a great way, that like I'm doing right now, this chisel edge, it really cuts down all the work for you. It makes it so much easier. And also, if you try to work and train yourself to use a larger brush, some of you might have only picked up maybe a 12 or even an 8 flat to do this base coating job here. Look at me. I am using a 3/4 inch flat brush, and you can see just how fast this bowl was painted and base coated. So now I'm just going to do the little foot of the bowl, and it does extend a little bit beyond the edge of my canvas here, and that's quite all right. I'm going to let this set up and dry just a second naturally before we do any shading or highlighting on this. So I'm just going to set my brush down for a moment, and let's pick up the next largest brush that's on our list, and that would be your number 12 flat brush. And let's go ahead and add some green out onto our palette. The green I'm going to work with first is our darker green, and that is your Thicket. So let's add just a little puddle of our Thicket. And what I'm going to do just to get started is kind of work around base coating in different areas so that they can be drying and we can come back then to our bowl. So with the Thicket, we're going to go ahead and paint in our leaves. And remember, our leaves have got like a little jagged edge. So again, I'm just kind of letting the flat of the brush as well as that chisel edge of the brush to kind of wiggle that stroke up one side of the leaf. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to turn my brush around, or turn my project around. And it's just all these small little like scallop strokes is what I'm doing. I'm just kind of scalloping that edge, and then we'll paint that in. So I'm going to work around any of the little berries that are nearby, and or work around any of the little blossoms that are nearby. And we're just going to get this leaf painted in with a base of our dark green. Again, that is Thicket. And then there's 2 other leaves. So we're going to repeat this process with the next 2 leaves. So I'm going to go ahead and start working on this one over here. Feel free to ask any questions as we move along. Like I said, I've got Dylan here with me, so he'll be able to help answer our questions or transfer them to me. If you are painting with me tonight, I would love to see your project when you are all done, and I invite you to join our Facebook community, and that is Let's Paint with Plaid. It's a great, warm, caring and sharing, loving community where you can learn how to paint. We ask everyone to share your work by taking a picture after you're a member of our group and sharing it in the group using the hashtag Let's Paint Challenge. You can also use any of Michael's hashtags. They have Make It with Michael's and Michael's Classes, I believe, are those 2 hashtags. Am I right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's great. So I want you to be able to share your work. We all want to be a cheerleader for you on your path or your journey of learning to paint. I've been painting myself since I was a teenager, but I still consider myself a student. I'm still learning to paint. Okay, so now I've got my 3 big leaves based in. I've got my bowl based in. The bowl was linen. My 3 leaves were Thicket, just to get some color on the canvas. We'll come back and we'll define more of these colors. We'll define more of these areas, but that just kind of gives me, oh, I'll put a little bit of green out here around this strawberry and that blossom too. All right, so now let's go ahead and clean the green out of this brush, and let's pick up some apple red and just get some color based on our, looks like a happy face. Let's get some apple red out, and I'm going to go ahead and just kind of get a base coat or an undercoat of our berries. There aren't that many berries, and the way I paint a berry for each of this style of berry is going to be very repetitious. It'll be the same for every single one. If you look at these berries and how they're drawn, kind of looks like, as I'm painting this one here, it kind of looks like it's an oval. So you can use your flat of your brush, and I'm using a number 12 flat in apple red, and kind of do like a C stroke this way, and then do the reverse of a C stroke. So you kind of made your oval, and then take that brush and come down along the tip and then back up again. And that's all there is to base coating in the shape of our strawberries. Again, let your brushes do the work for you. So let's do another one here. I'm just going to start with like a C stroke. Reverse that C stroke on the other side to create the other half of the top of the berry. And then I'm going to turn my canvas so that I could then stroke a little bit towards me to create that curve of the bottom of the berry. I see sometimes people get smaller brushes or even a little liner brush, and they're outlining the berry first and then kind of coming back and color book painting in the shape of it. But if you learn to master your brushes and your brush strokes, the direction that you want this to go in, you'll find that you can paint much more efficiently in a quicker manner. Not that speed is really the choice here, but you'll find that you won't struggle. It'll be a lot much easier for you. All right. And as we're going along, you can see here that I can even kind of change the shape a little bit of a berry if we want to make it a little bit fatter. I've got one more berry to do, so I'm turning it again towards me so that I could paint the top half of the strawberry first. I'm wondering if anyone in our group here loves to eat strawberries. We were talking about it earlier today. I love to go strawberry picking. One of the fields in the area here closed. The folks retired, and they don't have a place to pick berries anymore. I'll have to find a new location. It was always fun to go out and pick berries. All right, I think my bowl is ready to go back to it. So what I'm going to do is let the green of my leaves dry, let the red of our berries dry. I cleaned out my brush, but I'm going back to this larger brush that we used to base coat our linen. And I left my linen paint in it because I knew I was coming right back to this. So I'm just refilling this 3/4 inch flat brush with our linen, which was the base color of my bowl. And now I'm going to side load into my cinnamon. And I am going to just put a little bit of cinnamon on my linen brush. So when I show you a stroke here, I've got a brush that's mostly the undercolor, which is my linen, with just a little bit of this golden, kind of a golden brown color here that's called cinnamon on that one edge or the one corner. And so what I do now is I am going to separate the bottom from the bowl. So we're going to separate our stand. I'm going to keep my brush that has the cinnamon on it right up next to the line of our bowl. And we're just going to glide that brush across, kind of doing a little patting stroke. And look how that separated the base or the stand of our bowl from the bowl itself. We're also going to come across the top of the bowl. So stop and reload your brush as you need to. You want to make sure you've got plenty of paint on that brush. And I'm going up here right up next to the band or the top of the bowl. And I am using more a short little patting stroke to pat that color across until I come up close to the berry. Make sure your red of the berry is dry if you need to kind of work around that. Mine has already set up to dry. Working under these lights here, didn't take long for mine to dry. And I'm just going to kind of blend that cinnamon in with the linen, and we're kind of letting that I'm going to bring mine up so you can see. I'm kind of letting that get a little bit of a golden cast here at the top.
Hey, Chris,
now
what's
what
the color sub for cinnamon?
Raw sienna would be close. If you don't have raw sienna, you could also just use, I think yellow ochre would be good as a substitute.
Perfect, thanks.
All right, good question. Thank you, Dylan. All right, I'm going to constantly keep loading my brush between these two colors. And again, I'm using the linen and the cinnamon, and then I'm always going to blend on the palette to make sure my color is loaded properly in my brush, keeping the cinnamon close to my leaf. Now I'm going to go around some of that little serrated edge, or excuse me, little scallopy edge that we have to this leaf. And I want my bowl now to be shaded because that leaf is using the light to kind of cast a little bit of a shadow around onto the bowl itself. So again, I'm just going to keep using my little patty strokes, patty motions to kind of pull that color around. And you can see now that we've kind of darkened around the leaf. Yes, Isabel, you can use asphaltum for cinnamon. That would give you another fairly close color. Although asphaltum is a transparent color where cinnamon is not. Cinnamon is more opaque. So, but you'll still get a nice warm golden brown. So that would be fine as well. Excuse me. All right, now I've kind of shaded the stand, and I went across the top, working around the berries, working around this leaf that kind of dangles down. And now we want to put a little bit of color here on our outside edges. And so I'm going to continue loading that brush. Again, the same two colors, excuse me, same two colors. And I'm going to put a little bit of that cinnamon on the outside edge of my bowl and allowing that to kind of blend right into the body of the bowl. There's one side. Then we're going to do the exact same thing on the opposite side. So again, it's same colors. The brush is loaded the same way. And I'm using more a short choppy motion of patting to put that color on here. And what I'm going to do right now, while this is all still pretty wet, is I'm going to take my paper towel and I'm going to pinch the bristles to remove the color that's in there. I'm going to reload it with a little bit of our undercolor, again, the linen, and a little bit of white. So what I want to do now is add some white spots here within our bowl, just to kind of brighten it up. So again, this is linen with a little bit of white, and I'm just kind of patting that on just to kind of brighten up the body of the bowl. And it's okay if it looks a little brush strokey. We want it to kind of not be totally blended. We're making a piece of folk art. We're not worrying about doing fine art. And we're just kind of giving that a nice warm highlight. Okay, I'm going to let that kind of set up a few minutes. I want to do around this leaf here a little bit more. There we go. So while that's setting up, let's get one more color out onto our palette, and that is True Blue. This bowl is kind of a replica of an antique or vintage bowl, and it has a blue trim at the top of the bowl here. So we're going to, and I'll bring this up so you can see close. So there's a blue band at the top of this bowl. And then I also painted some little blue trim or some brush stroke work. You can do the strokes if you want, or you can do just the blue band. But that's what this color is right here. And this is true blue. And I'm going to switch down now to a number 8 flat brush. And I'm going to load that brush, both sides of the flat brush with the blue. And I'm going to again use my chisel edge to very carefully come along right where that pattern line is, and then work around the berries, work around the blossoms, anything that might be in the way of this band across the width of the bowl. And then I'm just going to pull it down. We can turn our work around right side or upside down, I should say, and do the same thing using the chisel edge of the flat brush and paint that line and then kind of fill it in. Because we have berries and blossoms kind of obstructing our view, it's not like we can paint a straight stroke all the way across. So you'll just have to do hit or miss between the berries, leaves, and blossoms. Again, this was true blue. And I'm using that beautiful number 8 flat brush and the chisel edge of that flat brush to get that painted in. Now I am going to show you tonight to do the stroke work on mine. If you want to add the stroke work, you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to. But I'm going to switch to a number 1 liner brush. And I'm going to dip my brush. Excuse me, I need to get a drink of water here. I'm going to dip my brush into some water, blot it on a paper towel, and then I'm going to come over here to the true blue, and I'm going to pull some of that color out so that I'm thinning the paint a little bit with the water or the moisture that's in the bristles of the brush. And what I'm going to do is make a nice fluid consistency of the blue. And then I'm going to make sure that I have a nice tip on the edge of this liner brush. So my liner brush is nice and full of the true blue, and I've got a nice tip. And to do these strokes, we're going to start, when you look at the strokes, you can see that there's a fat part and then there's a skinny little tail. We start at the fat part, and that's where we touch down and we apply pressure. And as I'm applying pressure, can you see that the bristles kind of fanned out? And then that's what makes the beginning of the stroke. So we touch down, we apply pressure, you start pulling, and as you're pulling, you're lifting and dragging and bringing it up to a nice fine point. Now I made that kind of big so that you could see it better, but we won't make our strokes quite as big here on the bowl itself. So you just want to find yourself a nice happy place. I would start maybe here at this leaf and work across to the edge of this bowl right here. So we're going to just touch down and we're going to pull and lift and come up to a nice fine tail, a nice fine point. Then you'll just start again. Your brush probably has enough paint in it to continue and do another stroke. So I'm going to touch down, apply pressure, pull, lift, and then come up to a nice fine point again. If you wanted to, if you don't want to do the brush strokes freehand, but yet you like the trim on the bowl, what I might suggest is letting this all completely dry. Let's finish the rest of the class tonight. You have these brush stroke patterns, so you could always go back and transfer this design onto your bowl when all is said and done, and you can paint those as a last minute thing if you'd like. So this one, I'm going to have just a tail end of a skinny part of the stroke. I'm going to touch down, apply the pressure, pull, and we have a start there. Then what I did, because that wasn't enough, I added a smaller little stroke here, and you can see just below where the one stroke tail ends and where the fat part begins of the next stroke, I added another little stroke starting down here, pulling up into that point. So if we had one here, here's my second one across the top of the bowl. I did a third stroke coming right down here and curved right up into that little connecting point. So if you want to, then you can go ahead and add, and this one's a much smaller stroke and it's closer to that little point. So you can add as many as you have little connections. Okay, I'm just going to clean up this one. I touched it twice. All right, so now what we're going to do, I think my bowl down here is dry enough. I'm going to show you how I put the crack on mine. Should you choose to put a crack on yours to age yours. I used my liner brush, and I also used the same shading color that we did for our bowl, and that is my cinnamon. So my liner brush, I'm just getting nice and filled full of the cinnamon, and then you have a pattern, so you could trace and transfer that pattern line if you want, or just kind of willy-nilly a crack. I started here at the bottom and I stroked up towards the middle of the bowl. So I just kind of put a mark down and made a couple little wiggles. I'll show you. And then from there, I kind of made like a Y. I kind of came up much lighter pressure, so it started getting smaller. And then from that, I kind of created the second half of my Y. So I just did all of that with the liner brush. But wait, we're not done yet. Now I'm going to switch to that number 8 flat brush, and I'm going to add just a little bit of that cinnamon on a corner of that brush. And on the bottom part of our crack, we're going to come along and just kind of blur this line a little bit and let it kind of like fade into the bowl itself, rather than making it look like it's sitting directly on top of the bowl. So I just kind of blurred the bottom end of that crack, and I'll do the same thing on the little Y part as well. Not putting a lot of paint on there, but just kind of blurring that line a little bit, and it just kind of softened that crack. All right, let's go back to the green of our leaves, and I'm going to go back to that number 12 flat brush. And with that number 12 flat brush, we're going to go ahead and fill it again with our Thicket. And this time I'm going to add, let's get another color out on our palette. Actually, let's go ahead and get 2 more colors out. I'm going to add our black, and that is Licorice. If you don't have Licorice, you can use pure black. You want a nice, deep, rich black color. And then let's get our highlight green out, and that is lime green. So you want to go ahead and put a little bit of lime green out on your palette as well. So now we have our number 12 flat brush. We've loaded it again with our Thicket. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to ever so lightly, just a little bit of Licorice to the corner of my brush. I'm going to darken that green on one corner of the brush. So I've got the full brush loaded with Thicket. I tipped just barely a corner of it into our black, into the Licorice. And now I'm blending on the palette. So I have a brush that has dark black green on my left side, Thicket on just the right side of the brush. Okay. So what we're going to do with the darker side of the brush towards the base of each of our leaves, we want to darken or shade in here. So any of these areas where I just kind of filled in between my blossoms and around some of the berries, we're just going to pat that dark shading color on, so that we're getting deeper into the pile of berries or the bowl, the display, and we're just going to start shading and pulling that color out a little bit. Okay, so we're not done with the leaf, but that's what we're going to do right now. So again, it's just a little bit of black, side loaded on the Thicket loaded brush, and then we'll come back in here, and we need to kind of make it nice and deep and dark here in behind all of this. So I'm working around my blossom at the base of the leaf, and I'm just kind of patting that dark green up towards the tip. I'm not really working dark all the way up, but if I carry some up, that's fine. And now I want to darken a little bit in here around this blossom, just using the corner of my brush. And one more time, I'm going to fill my brush with my Thicket, a little bit of my black, blend on the palette, and the dark side is going to be at the base of this leaf. So I'm going to be up here next to this blossom, around this berry here, around the berry on the other side. So now I've got like the base of that leaf, kind of like almost like a V shape where it's all nice and dark. And now I'm just going to pat across the width of that leaf, pulling that color up towards our center of the tip. Okay. That made a big difference right there, is just darkening in all of that area there. So now what I'm going to do, let's see, I think I'm just not going to clean my brush. I'm just going to wipe the brush out. And what I want to do now is I'm going to go ahead with my licorice, a little bit of the black, loading it the same way we had it loaded. And I'm going to now begin on this part of the leaf here. And let's go ahead and put a little bit of a stem in the middle. And I'm going to use the chisel edge of my brush. And I'm allowing that black or that dark green to kind of give me my separation line. It's so dark, you might not be able to see it too much. But I'm going to go ahead and give me a separation line here between each of the leaves. And I'm going to come up this way and give myself a vein. And then on this lower leaf, we're going to give ourselves a vein. Now our veins should curve a little bit. They don't need to be straight sticks. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to think about each of these leaves differently. There's going to, because we've now kind of almost divided it in half with that center vein, we're now going to think about, there's a light side of the leaf and then there's a darker side of the leaf. So with our brush loaded with the darker colors, again, we have the Thicket and the black or the Licorice. And I am going to now begin with my brush so that the black side of my brush is close to this vein line. I'm now going to start using the chisel edge, and I am going to start pulling out towards each of these little scallop lines. From the vein, I'm going to pull out to the scallops on the dark half of that leaf. And we'll do that on the dark half of each of our leaves. Now this one here, we're not going to see too much of the end, but you can kind of envision where that might be. And we're going to do it one more time with this leaf right here. And as I'm looking at this leaf, I'm going to say the right side of this leaf is my darker leaf. And I'm going to get a little bit more paint on the brush. Okay, now we're going to wipe the black and the green out of your brush. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to load the brush with just Thicket. And we're also going to side load into our light green, which is the lime green. And the lime green is what we're going to now use from the scalloped edge or the serrated edge of each of these little leaves. And we're going to use the chisel edge again with a little bit of pressure. We're going to start out on the edge. I'll just start here in the middle of the leaf so that you can see. And I'm going to pull with that little bit of the lime green on my brush. And I'm going to stroke now into the center. Can you see that where I've added just a few little strokes there? That's what we're going to do on the dark side of each of our leaves. Starting at the outside edge of the leaf now, working towards the center. And again, we're only working on the dark side of the leaf right now. So let's do that to all of those. I have the lime green side of my brush to the outside of the leaf. And it's a very short, choppy touch down, pull, lift, touch down, pull, lift. And reload your brush as often as you need to when you start losing that lime green. And this is what my three dark side of the leaves look like. We've got dark from the center vein going out. Now we have lime green going in. So now on the light side of the leaf, we are going to, with our same load of Thicket and lime green, we're going to take the chisel edge of the brush, beginning at the base of the leaf. And you know that line that we made for our stem line? We're going to go right next to that stem line with our lime green. And I've got one done on mine. I'm raising to show you. We'll do that on the other two leaves too. So again, it's the lime green, and we're basically kind of retracing our stem line right up next to the black line. And I am pulling from the base of the leaf out towards the tip of the leaf. And somebody might say, well, why did I not stop and get my liner brush to do this? Because you know me, I love my liner brush. But this is something that's quick and easy. It's a great way to train yourself to know how to use your brushes in multiple different ways. And so it's a good way to just kind of keep on going on without having to stop, reload, pick up a new brush, reload, and so on. On the light side of this leaf, we're going to do the same thing we did on the left side. We're going to start on the outside edge, and we're going to stroke in towards the center without that dark line coming out from the vein to the edge. So we're just going to add the lime green on the edge on each of those little scallop lines. Reload your brush as often as you need to. And you're stroking not down towards the base, but you're pulling these strokes from that scalloped edge of the outside of the leaf towards the center vein that we just painted. And here's my second leaf. And the third leaf is done the same way. This time you're going to be actually pulling some of this on top of that bowl. So it's a good thing you kind of already put your little shadows down behind this leaf. And all three of our leaves are now done. So we can clean our number 12 flat brush. And we're going to move on to our berries. These are simple little folk art berries. They're nothing that's very, very difficult. I want to quick give another coat of red onto each of my berries. So after you rinse and clean out the green from your brush, you can use that same number 12 flat brush. Go ahead and load it with your apple red, and just very quickly, remember how we based it in. We worked on our flat of our brush and kind of used those C strokes to kind of help us. We'll do the same thing again. And I've got two done. It doesn't take long once you already have the base of the undercoating done. I just want a nice bright red before we start introducing some darker colors to kind of really create the shape and mold of the berry. So I'm going to set this brush down. And what I want to do next is I want to, you can either, I didn't bring my palette knife. You can either brush mix a new color. You can brush mix and load your brush at the same time, which is what I'm going to do. Or if you want to use a palette knife, you can create a little bit of a dark burgundy color. If you're going to pre-mix your color with a palette knife, you're going to mix apple red with just the tiniest touch of your licorice, and you'll get a really beautiful burgundy color. But what I'm going to do right now, and let's get a couple more colors out onto our palette to continue working with our berries. We're going to add some orange, and this is pure orange. And we're also going to add some daffodil yellow. Just the tiniest little bit of daffodil yellow is all you need. So when I show you my strawberries here, let's focus on this berry right here. You can see that the top half, when you know what a strawberry looks like, they're usually kind of bulbous and very meaty up at the top, and then they kind of get smaller as they go towards the bottom of the berry. So what we need to do is we need to make some definition, and we need to kind of create some shading in to kind of help create that bulbous part. If you look at this one right here, this is a great example that you can see it's dark across the top, but it's also dark in here, kind of like when we think about this top part as an oval, it's kind of like the bottom part of the oval, if that makes sense. So each of my berries, here again, we've got a nice, beautiful oval. We're shading around the bottom of the oval. So what we're going to do is I've got my brush loaded with apple red. This is a number 12 flat brush, both sides of the flat brush with apple red. I'm going to tip just a corner of it into my black, and I might have too much black. Yes, I do. So I'm going to walk away from that. I'm going to pick up some more red. And now we're getting to what I want. I want a really beautiful burgundy color on one side or one corner of that flat brush, and I want red on the other side. So I've got a brush that is loaded with a deep burgundy here on my left, and it gradually in an ombre fashion goes over to the solid apple red to my right. So what I'm going to do is take one berry at a time. Let's start with this little guy out here on the edge. My second coat is already dry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to think about the underside of the berry. On this guy here, the underside of the berry is going to be my left side of the berry. So with the side of the brush that has my burgundy mix in it, I'm going to come across, and I'm using short, choppy little patty strokes. I'm going to come across the top of the berry, along the bottom side, not all the way to the tip. And remember, we talked about that oval shape, and it's kind of basically making like a C stroke here. I patted it on. I have my dark starting at the top, and then I kind of went all the way to the bottom of what I'm thinking of as my oval. So let's do that on another one. The next one over, I'll do the same thing across the top, along that one side. And again, you can see I'm just patting that color on. And you can already see that there's a little bit of definition in those berries. Now, as I move on to the next berry here, the bottom side is going to be this side of the berry. We've been working on the left side of each of those two berries. This berry, the bottom side, is going to be the right side. So I'm going to flip that brush over, do the same thing though. I'm going to start across the top with the apple red and my burgundy color already mixed in the brush. And I'm patting, starting at the top, coming along that edge, and then pulling it over into that bottom of the oval there. This last little berry here is almost not even in the bowl. It's the same thing. We're going to consider the side that's closest to our bowl as our underneath side. So I'm going to begin again with my shaded side of the brush to the right side of my strawberry. I'm going to start patting across the top of the berry, bring it down the edge, and then I'm going to pull over so that we're getting the bottom of that oval. And our little last berry here is going to be exactly the same way. So I'm going to stop and pick up a little bit more apple red, blend in and get some of this beautiful burgundy color here that we brush mixed. And I'm going to again start at the top of my strawberry, patting along the edge. And I am going to close up that little oval with our shading. All right, now we want to wipe this burgundy color out of our brush. You don't really have to clean it, but you do want to wipe your brush clean and get rid of that deep shading color of our brush. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding some definition on the light side of our berries. So we're going to pick up a little bit of apple red. We're going to add some of our pure orange. Again, I'm side loading, so I've got orange on one side, apple red on the other side. And so when we start this, we're going to look at these berries that we did over here. We're going to start on the opposite side that you shaded, and we're going to start just patting on. I'm not doing any specific strokes. I'm just patting on. It was this berry right here that I just did. You can even pick up a little bit of yellow with your orange if it's not getting highlighted enough. And you can just pat some of that color on. And now can you see there's a little bit more definition there? While you're doing that, you can also pat some of that color on the bottom of that, what little bit that's on the tip of our berry. So let's move on to another berry. I've got my apple red. I have some pure orange. I can even pick up a little bit of my yellow to kind of brighten that orange. We're patting that color on the meaty part, the top part of our strawberry, and we're putting some on the bottom of the strawberry. And I'm going to move on to another berry. We're repeating the same process to highlight the opposite sides of the berry. This is not meant to be completely blended in. These are more whimsical or folk arty, I should say, strawberries. They're not made to be totally realistic, although you're using a lot of the same colors that you see in berries. They're meant to be more a folk art style strawberry. So remember these two strawberries that are all the way to the right, they're flipped in a different direction. So you're going to need to flip your brush when you're adding that highlight color. And I'm doing the same thing on the berries too. Put a little bit more red into this one maybe. There we go. All right. I'm going to clean out my brush next. And we're going to switch to a smaller brush to kind of create the sepals of our berries. I'm going to use a liner brush. And I'm going to bring my hero up so that you can look really closely if you'd like. When you look at I'll focus in on one berry here, or a couple berries. When you look at the berries, you'll see the seeds. We don't want to get overly seeded, but there are a few seeds here and there. The seeds are all done with our Daffodil Yellow, and then a few of them are even shaded or accented, enhanced, I should say, with a little bit of our pure black. So we'll start with the yellow first. When we do the seeds on our berries, we've got, let's remember, we've got this kind of oval shape, and then we have a little bit of a bottom of our strawberry, right? We haven't done anything with our little strawberry tops or our bracts yet. We're going to worry about the seeds on here. When you're putting your seeds on, some of them could be dots, but they're not really just dots. They are seeds, and they're small little lines, just tiny little lines. I'll bring my sample up. You can see it again. When you're putting your seeds in, you don't want them all to look like rain coming all the way down. The seeds that are on the right of the berry need to kind of be like a parentheses that way. The seeds that are on the left of the berry need to kind of curve like that. They don't need to be as long or big as I just did. I did that big enough so that you could see. They're going to be more this size, very small and tiny. And the berries or the seeds that are going to be in the middle will be more like the straight little ones. So have a little bit of care when you're placing the seeds. I'll bring it back up one more time. Take a real good close look at those seeds. They kind of follow the shape of our friend, the berry here. So I've got my liner brush, and I'm going to start with my yellow. If I pick up a little bit of the orange that is here in my little puddle, that's quite all right. I want that to be nice and fluid. So I thinned my paint a little bit with some water. I want that to flow off my brush very easily. And I'll do just a couple on this berry right here so that you can kind of see. I'm on the right, so I've got kind of them flowing to the right, flowing to the left. When you look at a strawberry, there are many, many seeds, but it doesn't mean that we have to paint many, many seeds. There's one little strawberry that I just put yellow seeds on, if you care to look. And you'll do that same thing for all the rest of your berries. So I usually have the berry facing me with the bottom of the berry towards me, the top of the berry further away from me, so that I know I'm putting the shape of the seeds in correctly. We're going to curve on the right. We're curving towards the left, if that makes sense. You're going to make like the parentheses mark. And straight in the middle. And on the left side, you're going to curve to the right. How are we doing there, Dylan? Any questions?
No, we actually have a lot of questions about Lunch and Learn and Technique Tuesday. So I was just reminding everybody that we go live in the Let's Paint with Plaid Facebook group every Tuesday and Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern time. And you don't need a link or anything to get to that. All you need to do is join our Facebook group and turn your notifications on. And when we go live, you'll be notified, and you can just click on the link or click on the notification and it'll bring you right to our live stream.
Yes, we would love to have you there. My good friend Andy Jones and myself are the two lead instructors. We're there every single Tuesday and Thursday. We'd love for you to come join the party. Tuesdays are Technique Tuesdays. We usually talk about something that's maybe a new product with Plaid and or a new paint technique or a trick or something that you might find fun. And Thursdays are all project driven, kind of like you see here tonight. So join us. We would love to have you there.
Yeah, and another reminder that this lesson will be available on the Michaels Stores YouTube channel within about 12 to 24 hours. So you can just look up Michaels Craft Stores on YouTube. You'll find the one with the official Michaels logo, and then just be watching that channel, refresh it, and you'll see our video come up in their class playlist.
Yes. All right, let's real quickly move on to the other half of the seeds, and that is our black. So once you kind of get your yellow on, you don't have to go next to every single seed, but a few of them here and there will get a little bit of a black. I might go this one too. I'll bring mine up right now. So there is a little bit of a black. This is thinned also using your liner brush, just the tip of the brush. And that just kind of sets the seed, almost like a little seed pocket, if you will. It kind of sets the seed down into the berry. And I know they might look kind of funny now, but you don't have your little brackets on. So that will change here in just a moment. These little black seeds, little lines next to the seeds, just add a tremendous amount to the berries. And real quickly now, let's move on to our little brackets. So the little leaves at the top of the berry are going to be done with a smaller flat brush. I'm going to switch to a number 6 flat brush. I'm going to load my brush with Thicket, and at the same time, I'm going to load it with my lime green. I'm going to do a tiny little stroke where with the flat brush, I'm going to touch down, put a little bit of pressure, and then pull and lift up so that I'm back up on the chisel of the brush. So this is Thicket and lime green. And at the top of each of my berries, you can kind of look at your pattern if you want. You can pull out these little brackets. They can go on top of the berry. They can go beside the berry.
Those big summer sale is going on.
And there's one berry right here where let me get on camera, that I added the brackets to. So that's what you need to do for each one of these. And that again is your Thicket and a little bit of lime green. In some areas you might need more Thicket, in some areas you might need more lime green, depending upon the colors that you're working around. And I usually put, I don't know, maybe 4 strokes, could be 5. Depending upon where your strawberry is based, some of the little leaves can go above the berry. Some will fall down onto the berry itself. It's just a mixture of the Thicket and the lime green. And one more little berry here. Our strawberries have come to life, haven't they? For those of you that are painting, I really do want to see your project, whether you're painting with me tonight or you're going to paint on the replays. I think that's going to be great. I can't wait to see your project. Let's go on now real quick with, I'm going to get a little bit more black out, and I'm going to move that black that I have there. let's go ahead and get your large flat brush out. Again, that's my 3/4 inch flat. And I am going to get that full of our black paint. And what I want to do real quickly is just use that chisel edge and go around the shape of our bowl. And let's start basing in the background. We still have a little bit of the blossoms to do and our filler leaves, but let's just go ahead and get a little bit on. And if you want, you can stroke it all the way to the outside edge if you want, or just get yourself enough and maybe don't go all the way to the outside edge so that you'll still have part of the canvas that you can grab onto. We want to start getting up close to our subject matter here, because remember, there's going to be a little bit of greenery that will, and maybe a few blossoms that will pull out from our design. So large flat brush, I'm using a 3/4, get it full of our licorice, and then just stroke out from the outside edge, or stroke out from your design towards the outside edge of your canvas. This is another great exercise where you're going to let your chisel edge kind of come into play, and you're going to work around that leaf and around your berries, around the blossom designs. And if you want, like I said, don't go all the way to the outside edge, because then you'll have a way to hang on to or handle this. Now, somebody always asks me when I do a black background, why did I not just pick up a black canvas? Well, you can. However, let me just tell you, for tonight's class, when we only have an hour together, trying to base coat our subject design of the berries and the bowls and the leaves on top of a black canvas would take forever. We don't have that time, unfortunately, tonight when we are all together just to paint in a short time period. So I always paint this first and then do a little bit of the black background around. You can always come back and do the outside edges, but this is a good way to go ahead and just kind of get your color in there. Again, it's just the mastering the use of your brush. Now, if you have a black canvas and you are home and you're not worried about a time restraint, let's say you're painting on the replay, by all means, use that black canvas. And what you can do is base coat everything and undercoat it well before you begin the decorative painting part, because you will want to have a nice, good, solid white maybe underneath the bowl. You'll need to have a really good color underneath the red of our berries to let them pop. When you're undercoating red, a good pro tip for the day is to undercoat with a yellow ochre versus undercoating with red. A lot of times our reds and yellows are not the best paint colors to have the best hide. So you'll always want to find a way to undercoat, and red undercoat is definitely great with a yellow ochre. All right, I taught a class painted with a black background not too long ago. We did the exact same thing. We painted the subject matter, and then we came around real close afterwards and painted the black. All right, so mine's pretty much done to a certain point where I can continue teaching now. So I'm going to pick up my black and paint in between as we move on. But let's go ahead and begin with the, let's see, I don't want to do my berries yet. I want that to dry a little bit. Let's go ahead and start with some of this greenery. So I'm going to use my number 12 flat brush. I'm going to fill it on the flat side of the brush with our Thicket, and I'm going to fill it also with the lime green. Using the chisel edge of my brush, I'm going to pull out from our design, and I'm going to pull out a couple little stems where I want to have some leaves and maybe a berry to come out, or maybe a blossom. So I'm going to pull out the lime green and create some stem work. Let's see, maybe one coming in from this berry here. So this is all done. I'm going to bring it up so you can see close. This is all done with my number 12 flat brush. I'm using the chisel edge of the brush. Let's bring one right out this way. Okay. So now I can go ahead and switch to a smaller brush. I think I'll take my number 6 flat brush, and I'm going to load that good and full with my lime green. And we're going to do just like we did our bracts of our strawberries. We're going to come out here and we are going to add a few little leaf strokes. And my black is not completely dry. You might want to wait until your black is dry, but I kind of like how it's blending into the black. So I am using my number 6 flat brush. I am touching down and pulling and lifting just like we did the bracts or the little leaves at the top of our strawberry. And we're pulling out some leaves on each of these little stems that we just pulled out here. And I sometimes start at the tip and then put a few more leaves in as you go along the stem line. One more over here. And one more over here. All right, now what I'm going to do is I am going to clean that brush just by pinching it on my paper towel. And I'm going to start working with white on the outside of these little areas that we just added first. And that is with the same brush. I'm going to fill the brush good and full. I just pinched it to clean and remove the paint. And now what I'm going to do is with a lot of white in my brush, I'm going to turn my project so that I'm pulling towards me. And I am going to use not the flat of the brush, not the flat, but I'm going to turn it upright so that I'm touching down the corner of the brush, and I'm going to do a little tiny mark and pull in. And then I'm going to do one on either side of those, really close, making 3 little short pulls, and that's our little blossoms. So wherever you would like to add a blossom, and I would just tell you, be very, very careful. Not, maybe it's the bud of a blossom. Don't overdo it. Just add a few here and there. So let me turn this around so you can see there's 2 right there on that side. And then maybe I'll add a couple over here. You could even put one on top of your leaf if you like. One out here on the edge. And again, my black is still just starting to set up, so it may not be completely dry, but I'm allowing that black to kind of work with the wet paint on top. And now I do want to clean this brush one more time because we're going to start working on the blossoms here in the middle. And what I want to do is pick up my white. And these little blossoms are just small little strokes where I'm kind of, let me do it here with the dark green so you can see. Not doing dark green, I'm doing white right now, but I'm going to start here on the chisel edge, and I'm going to touch down and just put some pressure and then kind of come back up. Touch down, put some pressure and come back up. So it's kind of connecting several of this little stroke. And when you look at my little blossoms, I think there's either 4 or 5, depending upon where they fit in with the strawberry, where they fit in with a leaf. And so we're just going to paint all these little petals white. And I think all of your greenery and I think all of your red, the bowl, I think everything should be dry around. So if you want to bring a petal on top of a berry, you can do that. If you want to bring a petal on top of a leaf, do that. If you don't want the full petal of the flower showing, let it remain behind the leaf. Let it remain behind the berry. All right, I'm almost got 3 almost done. It's just a small little stroke. And you'll notice I'm holding my brush back. Here's a pro tip. I'm holding it back further. I'm not up here on the metal ferrule. I'm holding it back because this is giving me more movement, more freedom to do this little scallopy swoop for each of the berries, or I'm sorry, blossoms. We are not going to labor over these flowers. We're not going to worry about a lot of shading on each of these petals. This is all very simple because we want our strawberry to be our highlight, to be our center stage, front and center thing. I'm going to pick up just a little bit of my lime green on the same brush that has our white. Excuse me. And I'm going to come back to the center of our berries. And with that corner of the brush where the lime green is, I'm just kind of tapping that lime green in the center of the berry. Again, just keeping these simple. And I'm adding that to the center of each of my berry or blossoms. Did I say berries again? Just putting that lime green in the center. And now I'm going to clean my brush, and I'm going to pick up my liner brush, and I'm going to bring some of this Daffodil Yellow here closer to me. I'm going to thin some of this down. I want it nice and fluid. I'll bring up my sample so you can see. The center of each of these little blossoms is simply just a series of dots. So you can use your liner brush and you can add all of the dots to the centers here. Just kind of using the tip of your brush to dot your surface. And or if it's easier for you to go back to your stylist, you can use your stylist and you can do little ditty dotties with your stylist too. But there's lots of little yellow dots just to the center of our blossoms. And there we go for that. And then one last thing we're going to do is I'm going to use my liner brush. I'm going to come over here to my dirty puddle of lime green, add some water to it just to make it a little bit more fluid. And my lime green now is, like I said, it's dirty. It's got some Thicket mixed in it, which is a pretty color. And what I'm going to do now is create the little tendrils or curlicues. I'll bring mine up so you can see. There, look up here, there's one. We're going to start inside our design and we're going to curlicue out from the design in any place that you want to add a curlicue. And that curlicue is done from the very tip of your liner brush. You need to hold your brush straight up and down to your surface. And I don't want you to see just the top of my hand. So I'll hold mine so that you can see everything. But what you're doing is you are going to touch and then just with your arm and your shoulder, move your whole arm to add little trendles or curlicues, very fine, delicate lines. So I'm going to hold mine up so that you can see. Let's see, maybe this is a good way to do it. So I'm going to start here in the design and I'm going to pull out and just make little curlicue lines wherever you want to kind of add a little bit of more grace. Some of them could be longer, some of them could be shorter. Just don't get carried away and add too many. I think I added maybe 4. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I added maybe 4 on mine. And it's okay for them to flow over on top of a berry or on top of a leaf. You want it to start in the center of your design and work outwards. Dylan, do we have any questions?
No, but we have a lot of compliments from Carrie and Patrice. They're all just really happy that you were teaching this tonight, and they always learn a lot from your lessons.
Well, thank you, everyone. I am so grateful that you all take your time to come and paint with us. Dylan and I appreciate you all showing up on time and having a good time with us. While we were talking, I quickly picked up my 3/4 inch flat brush and I painted the top of my design. Once that's dry and I have a better handhold, I will actually trim and paint the edges of my design too. And this is exactly what I did on this. I painted my edges. Now, if you were to frame yours, you don't have to worry about painting the edges, but I think it's easy to hang on the wall just as it is. And let me share with you up close and personal the finished one more time in case you want to do some screenshots or take a look at closer how the strawberry is put together, how the leaf is put together. Very, very simple little blossoms. And here we go. Here's, if you want to do a little screenshot, here's the whole project. I hope everyone had a good time tonight. I think we can go back face on one more moment because I want to share with you what the next Michael's class is going to be. I hope you all enjoyed bowl of berries this evening. And our next class, let me get a little paint off my finger here before I touch it, is going to be taught by Andy Jones. And so Andy will be here in the Michael's Community Classroom on June the 6th. Mark your calendars, June 6th. That happens to be a Tuesday. It'll be the same time as tonight. It'll be 7:30 Eastern Standard Time here in the Michael's Community Classroom. This means that you must go to michaels.com, click on classes and events, and go to the online classes and scroll down till you come to the date, June 6th. You'll have to sign up and register like you did for this one so that you receive the Zoom link. This class is called I'm Really Rosie. And Andy will be teaching this again on June 6th. So I hope that you all had fun painting bolo berries with me this evening, and that maybe you'll look at your calendar and make your Tuesday, June 6th free so that you can paint with Andy. Any questions, Dylan?
No, everybody just says thank you. So we'll join you again next class.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And be sure and become a member of our Let's Paint with Plaid community. I'd love to see you in there and be a cheerleader for you on your own journey of learning how to paint. So until next time, I'm Chris Williams, and Dylan Estes was here with me this evening. You all have a great time, and come on, everybody, let's
Let's paint.